Hello, Reckless Writers. I'm Argo.
And I'm Mel.
Today we're talking about writing groups. And this is Writing Without a License. So let's get straight into it. Why do I need a writing group?
Because you're not writing. That's why.
Don't attack me.
I'm not writing either. I feel so guilty. But that's why we need to get back on with the writing group stuff. That's why we should be doing it.
So you're saying that writing groups help motivate you to write?
Yeah, it's like positive peer pressure. Because, instead of... people usually think of peer pressure as your friends being mean to you, but in this case it's like, oh, I'd really love it if you wrote a new chapter. Like, I really want to read more, and you're like, oh, I really should. So it's that kind of peer pressure. There's probably another better word for it.
Positive peer pressure?
Just encouragement.
that is, yeah. Having like that weekly or fortnightly or however oftenly just feedback to go, yep, I am writing. Like, there is a purpose to this little section of writing. It's not just overall the whole book. It's like this bit of writing has actual purpose this week.
I think it's also like the community aspect, because I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm writing I feel like, God, this is such a stupid thing to be doing. But if other people that I respect are doing it too, it's less stupid.
Yeah, that's fair. Especially if you end up delving deeper into fantasy and you're writing, why am I writing about trees?
Yeah.
And then someone else reads it and takes it as seriously as you do, and you're like, yeah, this is serious business.
And people totally dig trees.
One other thing I do want to mention, though, is how it is important for other people to actually read your work. Not just on the motivational thing, which we covered last week, but on the actual quality of writing side of things. That is because when you're writing it, you already know half of it in your head. You can't see it objectively as someone else coming to it would. That things you thought were obvious won't be, and things that weren't obvious should be.
I mean, if you have like completely no friends, which is very sad, but the other thing you can do if you're completely on your own is you can kind of mimic that by taking time away from your work. So like, but usually you'd have to take months away, and it's not really that efficient for you to be able to distance yourself properly from a piece of work, as opposed to, just sending it to someone else very quickly and hearing their thoughts, and then you can be like, ah, yeah. Should have remembered that they can't get to that place that quickly.
Although that does bring me on to my next question. What if I don't have any friends who write? Where will I find a writing group?
Oh, well, I know some people just start up a Discord server. Not me. I look for people who can write. I'm lucky. I know writers like you. But I have heard of people who start up like their own servers and just get absolute randos on there, and then they kind of like basically send them chapters to read, but it's like free work and they're strangers, so whether or not you can really trust their input is debatable, because they're getting it for free and they probably don't want to hurt your feelings. So
I think that's some of it is why it's important to have more than just the one beta reader. It's like if 2 people reading it are better than 1, then having 3 or 4 really helps narrow it down. So even if you're going with random people where you can't quite trust the level of feedback or how honest or even how brutal it can be, by, let's say, consolidating several people's, which is the advantage of writing groups rather than just partners. it allows you to kind of pick and choose the feedback you find the most helpful and the general consensus. Because art is subjective at the end of the day. I mean, it's one of the things they suggest to make you feel better. If you think your writing is bad or you get a bad review on something you've published, is to look for your favorite book on like Amazon and go to the reviews and then sort lowest to highest. Because guaranteed, your favorite book has some reviews of people who not got it.
Yeah. Yeah, you really do have to think about what sort of people you are requesting feedback from. Because I had a seminar back in uni full of people who didn't really read fantasy. And the ones who did really liked my work. The ones who didn't obviously didn't like my work. But like some of their feedback was still useful because it was input from like different minds. They're coming from different perspectives, but at the end of the day, they're not my audience. So, but on the other hand, if you're only taking in the good feedback, like that's not necessarily good for you either because you're not progressing and you're not learning. So the best feedbackers are people with the same interests as you who still find a few flaws in your work that you can deal with. That's what you're really looking for in a good feedbacker, irrelevant of whether they're your best friend or a stranger from the internet or your mum.
See, I'm lucky. The feedback I get from my mum is some of the harshest out there.
Mm-hmm.
She'll be the first to pick apart a thread or something. Love you, mum. But yeah, it's one of those things as well of depending on how you can handle feedback, definitely links to the sort of people you want feedback in your work. And whilst starting out or whilst like beginning a writing group, you don't always know what they're going to be like, or you can't particularly be picky. If you know 3 people writing a book, they're going to have to be the 3 people you give your work feedback to. But if you do find that, like, if some people are just feedbacking in a particular way that just goes against you, like it doesn't inspire you to write better, it just makes you feel like, oh, I need to give up on this. Then
Yeah.
you've got to take their feedback with larger handfuls of salt.
Sometimes buckets.
Just take it by the wheelbarrow, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Do the Stranger Things scene. But yeah. But then equally, the other side of that is you will come across people who are much better feedbackers for you. That actually, they get it. Some of the best feedbackers I find are, like you were saying, with that extra level of, they can tell what you were trying to do. Like, they can look at the scene you've written and go, it doesn't hit, but I can see what you're trying, maybe try this. And you don't have to listen to that suggestion, but it might be enough just to get the brain cogs thinking.
Yeah, and I think anyone who's listening to this should, like, probably be viewing this from the other side of it. Like, with the title of this is probably going to be something along the lines of why you should form a writing group. But this section also applies to how you can be a better feedbacker to the people that you write with. Because if you're not a good feedbacker, those people may not want to write with you for very long. So
Yeah. And I think this is one of the suggestions I heard before starting a writing group. And it's a suggestion that I don't always listen to, but a lot of the time when I do listen to it, it does pay off. Is that when someone is feedbacking your work, especially face-to-face or via Zoom or something, is to stop and just listen. You'll automatically want to defend your book. It's natural. You've spent so much time on their book, story, whatever, any piece of artwork, to be honest. And when they're going, oh, this, it'll be very easy just to take it personally and go, oh, it's because of this. Oh, this is the thing. So you get into the thing of, if it's not in the book, then they're not going to know it. Okay, yes, this might be something you fixed. You know, this may make sense with the context, but if you've not provided the context, I think, and it'd be very easy to just start going back on that. But all you're doing is wasting time. Then you're better off stopping, listening, writing down the feedback. And I know some groups completely ban you from talking when they're feedbacking your piece of work. which I feel is a bit harsh. But if you're that sort of person, maybe you need that like complete barrier to go, no, I'm just going to cry for 30 minutes while you explain all the issues. And then I'm going to come back to it tomorrow when I've got a clear head and go, okay, yeah, this was right, this was right, this was right. Like, oh, this could be done better.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally see why some groups would like want silence, but personally, I would hate that. I mean, I do sometimes find it difficult to shut up when receiving feedback, and I know it's a problem. But at the same time, it's like...
It's human.
Yeah. I want to know from you what I could have done better sometimes. Like, if I've not provided enough context for something to have occurred, I want to be able to ask, do you think it would have worked better with this? Or do you think I needed to have said this line that appeared over here again?
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes that's some of the biggest benefits from a group, is that you can ask those questions. And as long as you're like asking of how to improve or what their opinions matter, the issue comes is when you start defending it, or you have to find a reason for why they're wrong. I feel that's definitely a way that really benefits from you being in a writing group, is that you can ask that feedback back. You can go, what would be the improvement? Like, you've got to resist the urge to defend, but at the same time, if you want to get that immediate, if I'd done this previous back, like this back in the last chapter, will it benefit this? Would you be going into this in a different way? But then that still comes down to the being able to respect their opinion when it comes to your own writing. Which is why sometimes it's good to ask the question and good to ignore the response. Which is not the message I wanted to send today. But that's fine.
This is going to be a bit of a hot take, but I feel like if you're having to enforce silent feedback in your writing group, then maybe you're in a writing group with someone or a few people that shouldn't be there. Like, if you get to that point.
Is that not to be afraid that, or at the very least to realise that writing groups have an expiration date. They just do. Sometimes it's your feedback to them, sometimes it's their feedback to you, sometimes it's that you really just aren't enjoying their work. I mean, it's one of the worst ways to go, but if you're putting yourself reading through 3,000, 4,000 of their book and you're really not enjoying it, you're not going to be giving good feedback, and then, it deteriorates. And it's natural.
Yeah.
Writing groups die, and then you'll start a new writing group with some people, less people, a whole new set of people.
It's definitely not an indication that the people who have left or called it quits think that they're better than you. It could just be that tastes have changed. Like, and even if it was that they're better than you, people do learn at different speeds. And that's just how things work. But it's not necessarily that.
And it's just one of the inherent natures of, of art being subjective, and of opinions being subjective. And so, it'll come to an end. But the key is then you find someone else. You find new groups, you find new people, and then you benefit from having brand new perspectives. Like, you come across new people. There's someone in my writing group now who always comes up with like a really good... They always come up with something I've never spotted. Like one person will always bring up the things I kind of already knew, but it's good to have that reassurance. And then the other will be like, oh yeah, this is an issue. And you'll be like, oh no. That's always the worst. But ultimately, it makes the book better in the long run. So, what other pitfalls would you say there are in creating a writing group? Or running one?
Oh God. Unfortunately, like, my main struggle is with motivation right now. And when other people aren't writing, neither am I. It kind of spreads. It goes both ways for me at the moment. that's like a really small thing. I don't think we need to talk any more about that, lest I think more about it.
We did cover motivation a lot last week, so
We
check
did.
out that episode.
Yeah, but demotivation is catching too. Other pitfalls. If you're in a group, I mean, this doesn't just apply to writing groups. I felt this more in D&D, but if you're in a writing group where there are people from different time zones, or like one person is just like far too busy, and you've like made it a thing that you all have to be there in order to have the discussion, and then it just doesn't happen for months and months and months, that is not good. It's not working. And it really bothers me. Like,
I definitely feel that's one of the biggest pitfalls is making sure that you are meeting on everyone's timeline. And different people have different writing speed and such, but especially for meeting, that you want to be able to have that regularity, to be able to have that, you're going to be able to submit and feedback. And even if you're not able to submit, being able to feedback is like crucial. And putting in, the respect that you want their feedback, and you should give equal amounts of feedback in return.
Mm-hmm.
They should give their work the time you would hope everyone else gives yours.
Yeah, that's definitely been a problem in previous groups I've been in. Like, the first couple of weeks away, you're kind of sussing people out. And if you're spending like an hour and a half on feedback because like you're really into the work and you really like the people, and then they respond to yours with like 2 lines and like, this was okay, I guess, then you're kind of like, they maybe don't deserve the same amount of time that you've been giving everyone else if they're not prepared to give it to you. And you kind of have to make peace with that. You can't force them to work for you by keeping working for them. You just have to kind of like let them go.
I think it's perfectly fine in those sort of situations to, if they are only giving you minimum amounts back, is to tone down the amount of time you're putting into it in return. Like, you don't have to go all out on every piece of feedback if you're not getting that back. It comes down to, you've got to prioritize your time, and not put yourself too far out if it's not going to make any difference to them.
Yeah, it took me far too long to learn that at university. I was that kid who got annoyed that other people weren't properly feedbacking, or like just turned up and like would receive all this stuff about their work and then not give any to anyone else. And then in my last year I was like, wait, I only have to feedback the people who give me proper feedback. And proper means that they've spent time on it, not like who give me good feedback, not the people who like it, the people who try for my work. Those are the people that I put my effort towards. And everyone else is just like, I'll tell you what I think of it on the day if that's how you feel about mine.
Which sort of feedback do you prefer? Do you prefer the written sort, like annotated comments and such, and maybe a paragraph at the end? Or do you prefer that face-to-face and that verbal delivery?
I think you really need both.
Okay.
I think some people are going to find that controversial, but I think you need the written feedback because you need to process it in your own time first a little. And if you're getting like some kind of deep comments, or like if you have a specific problem with sentence structure or like grammar or really common spelling mistakes, that doesn't need to get brought up in a face-to-face conversation. However, if you've got like an idea or a plot development that you're having trouble ideating, then that's so much easier to talk about in a conversation, like in a room. Like, you can't really get that through letters to each other.
True. I think definitely that group discussion. I feel like maybe one-to-one it's not horrendously different, but you definitely benefit from having 2 or 3 people discuss your work, and bounce off each other and refine their own feedbacks as they're delivering it to you.
Yeah, yeah, because like maybe like if you've got like, oh, I don't know how to get this character to fall in love with this character, then the other people in your group will have their own different ideas about how that should work, and maybe you'll like one of them, but one of the other people might be like, that doesn't work because of this, and you'll already know the problems, and it just saves so much time, so much.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, both for sure.
One of my favorite discussions to listen to is, and I often throw this out as a question at the end of feedbacking, is to hear what they expect to happen next or what they hope for later on in the book. I find it really useful to narrow down, and we'll cover this at a later date, of expectations and promises and fulfillments, but being able to hear that and hear them going, oh, what about this? What about that? Sometimes it gives you ideas you can steal and they can feel good because they guessed it. But then other times it's just good to know that, okay, yeah, this character that you are planning on doing stuff is like that he is hitting properly. They are looking forward to seeing what happens with them and how that story concludes. Versus other characters where you're like, okay, I need to include them more because they've got to be more important.
Yeah.
It's good to know what seeds you've sown successfully and which you
or
do
accidentally.
need. Or accidentally. Many
as it sometimes turns out.
As it turns out many times.
Yeah. Oh dear.
That's why I don't believe people who say that they only ever outline.
Yeah.
No one gets halfway through a book and it's like, yeah, this isn't going exactly what I need.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's you, well done.
Yeah, you're probably the only person reading it, though.
I mean, feel free to leave a comment telling us.
Or not.
Or don't.
I don't think I can handle it.
You just don't want to know that those sort of people exist in the world.
They don't. They're not real. Sorry. if you are there. I don't believe in you.
So we don't believe in our listeners. And with that bombshell, we shall end it here.
Oops.
We don't believe in our listeners. Both of them.
Both of them. Who are the
Both
two?
Oh. Presuming one of our mums.